Please don't throw us out. We have nowhere else to go." The words came out trembling from Carolyn's lips as she held her 6-year-old daughter in her arms, both with eyes wide with fear. The man before them, tall, wearing an impeccable black suit and a gleaming Rolex on his wrist, was the owner of the lake house they had broken into. Brent Poole, a 33-year-old millionaire CEO, had just found them in the master bedroom of his property, singing his late wife's favorite song. Carolyn's heart pounded erratically. This was the end. She would be arrested. Debbie would be taken by social services. Everything she had fought for, all those nights sleeping in the freezing car, all those days searching for shelter, it would all be in vain. Tears began streaming down her face as she pressed little Debbie against her chest. "I know we invaded your home," Carolyn sobbed, her voice breaking with every word. "I know we had no right. But my daughter is sick. She has a heart condition and needs shelter, warmth, safety. We were evicted. We have no family. Her father abandoned us. We were sleeping in the car, but Debbie was getting sicker and sicker." Brent remained motionless, observing the scene before him. He should be furious. He should call the police immediately. But something about this mother's desperation, something about the way she protected her child, touched a part of him that had been dead for 4 years. "Please," Carolyn begged once more, her voice now barely a whisper. "If you're going to call the police, I understand. But please, make sure my daughter is taken care of. She doesn't deserve to go back into the system. She's already suffered too much." What happened next would change all their lives forever. Before we continue with the story, tell us where you're watching from and how old you are. I hope you enjoy the story. The leather steering wheel felt cold beneath Brent Poole's trembling hands as he navigated the winding road toward the lake house. His 33-year-old face, usually composed and commanding in boardrooms across the city, was etched with exhaustion. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, evidence of countless sleepless nights spent drowning in spreadsheets and acquisition deals. The expensive black Armani suit he wore, perfectly tailored to his frame, felt suffocating. Even his Rolex, a symbol of his success, felt heavy on his wrist like a shackle rather than an achievement. The crisis at Poole Industries had reached a breaking point. A hostile takeover attempt led by Marcus Blackwell, his former mentor turned rival, had been orchestrated with surgical precision. Stock prices had plummeted 23% in just 2 weeks. Shareholders were panicking, calling emergency meetings, demanding answers Brent didn't have. The board of directors, once his loyal supporters, now questioned every decision he made. Their confidence in his leadership was crumbling. This morning, during what should have been a routine quarterly review, Brent had felt his chest tighten, his vision blur. The numbers on the projection screen had started to swim before his eyes. His collar felt like it was choking him. His heart hammered so hard he thought it might burst through his ribcage. The panic attack had come without warning, forcing him to excuse himself mid-presentation, stumbling from the conference room while 12 pairs of eyes watched him with concern and judgment. He had barely made it to his office bathroom before collapsing against the door, gasping for air like a drowning man. His hands shook violently as he loosened his tie, splashed cold water on his face, and stared at his reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at him was a stranger. Hollow eyes, gray pallor, stress lines etched deep into his forehead. At 33, he looked 50. "What are you doing to yourself?" he had whispered to his reflection. "What's the point of any of this?" That was when he made the decision. For the first time in 4 years since Doris died, he would return to the lake house. His assistant had protested. His CFO had warned him this was the worst possible time to take a vacation. But Brent had been firm. 1 week. He needed 1 week away from this madness or he would completely fall apart. The place held too many memories, too much pain. But something inside him knew he needed to go there. He needed to remember what it felt like to be human, to feel something other than the constant ache of loss and the pressure of corporate warfare. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the pine trees as Brent's black Mercedes pulled into the gravel driveway. The lake stretched out before him, a mirror of silver and gold reflecting the dying light. For a moment, he just sat there, engine idling, remembering. This was where he and Doris had spent their happiest moments, where they had talked about having children, about growing old together, about dreams that would never come true. Brent turned off the engine and stepped out, his Italian leather shoes crunching on the gravel. The air here was different from the city, cleaner, carrying the scent of pine and water. He grabbed his weekend bag from the trunk and approached the house, fishing for his keys. Then he noticed it. The window on the side of the house, the one facing the garden, was open. Not just unlocked, but open. His heart began to race, this time not from panic, but from adrenaline. Someone had been here. Someone might still be here. Brent's hand instinctively reached for his phone, ready to call the police, but he hesitated. Something made him want to investigate first. Slowly, carefully, he unlocked the front door and eased it open. The hinges creaked softly, a sound that seemed deafening in his heightened state of awareness. The interior of the house looked exactly as it should, yet somehow different. It was clean, cleaner than it had been in years. The dust that should have accumulated was gone. There was a faint smell of lemon cleaner in the air. Someone had definitely been living here. Brent moved through the living room, his footsteps silent on the hardwood floors. His pulse thundered in his ears. Then he heard it. A voice, soft and melodious, coming from upstairs. A woman's voice, singing. And the song, God. The song made his blood run cold. It was Doris's favorite song, the one she used to hum while making breakfast, the one she sang in the shower, the one that played at their wedding. How could anyone be singing that song in this house right now? Brent climbed the stairs, each step deliberate and quiet. The singing grew louder, clearer. It was coming from the master bedroom, his and Doris's bedroom, the room where he had planned to sleep tonight, though he knew it would be difficult. He reached the doorway and stopped, frozen by the scene before him. A young woman sat on the edge of the bed, her back to him. She had long blonde hair that caught the afternoon light streaming through the window, turning it to gold. She wore a faded yellow t-shirt and worn jeans, clothes that had clearly seen better days. In her arms, she cradled a little girl, no more than 6 years old, with matching blonde hair styled in adorable pigtails. The child wore a red dress that looked like it had been washed 100 times, the color fading but still vibrant. The woman was singing softly, tenderly, rocking the child gently. The little girl appeared to be sleeping, or trying to, her small hand clutching her mother's shirt. Brent stood there, unable to move, unable to speak. The scene was so intimate, so pure, that interrupting it felt like a violation. But he had to. This was his house. They were trespassers. He cleared his throat. The woman was young, perhaps 26, with delicate features and blue eyes that now filled with panic. She had the kind of beauty that poverty couldn't completely hide, though it tried. Her faded yellow t-shirt hung loose on her thin frame, evidence of too many missed meals. Her jeans were worn thin at the knees, carefully patched. Her blonde hair, though clean, needed a professional cut. But it was her hands that told the real story. They were rough, calloused, the hands of someone who had worked hard and received little in return. "Oh God," the woman gasped, immediately standing and positioning herself between Brent and the child. Her hands were shaking violently. "Please, please, I can explain. Please don't call the police. Please, just let me explain first." Brent found his voice, though it came out harder than he intended. "You're in my house. You broke into my house." His heart was still racing, his mind trying to process the scene before him. I know, and I'm so sorry." Tears were already forming in the woman's eyes, threatening to spill over. "I know there's no excuse for what I did, but please, just hear me out. Please, I'm begging you." The little girl began to cry softly, and the woman immediately turned to comfort her, even while keeping her eyes on Brent. "It's okay, baby, it's okay, Mommy's here." Her voice, despite her fear, was gentle and soothing. It was clear she had practiced calming frightened children. Brent felt his anger wavering. He should be furious. He should call the police immediately. But something in this woman's eyes, in the way she held her child, in the desperation that radiated from her like heat, made him pause. It was the same desperation he had seen in his own eyes earlier today, staring at his bathroom mirror. "Start talking," he said, his voice still stern but less harsh than before. "And this better be good." The woman took a shaky breath, one hand still stroking her daughter's hair. The little girl had stopped crying but watched Brent with wide, terrified blue eyes. "My name is Carolyn. Carolyn Lee. This is my daughter, Debbie. We've been staying here for about 2 weeks. I know it was wrong. I know it was illegal. But I had nowhere else to go. Nowhere." "That doesn't give you the right to break into someone's home," Brent replied, though his curiosity was growing despite himself. "You're absolutely right." Carolyn's voice cracked with emotion. "You're absolutely right, and I hate myself for it. I've never done anything like this before. I'm not a criminal. I'm desperate." She paused, struggling to find the words. Debbie whimpered softly, and Carolyn pulled her closer. 3 weeks ago, we were evicted from our apartment. I lost my job 2 months before that. I worked as a waitress at a diner in town, but they cut staff, and I was the newest hire. I tried everything to pay rent. I sold everything I owned except what we're wearing and a few essentials. I pawned my mother's wedding ring, the only thing I had from her. I begged my landlord for more time, but he had his own bills to pay. He couldn't wait anymore. She stopped, tears now flowing freely down her face. The day of the eviction, they threw our things on the street. What little we had. A neighbor helped me load what would fit into my car, a beat-up Honda that barely runs. The rest was just left there for anyone to take. Our whole life just abandoned on a curb like trash. Brent felt his throat tighten. He couldn't imagine that kind of humiliation, that kind of loss. "I don't have any family," Carolyn continued, her voice barely above a whisper now. "I grew up in foster care here in this town. I was shuffled between 7 different homes between the ages of 6 and 18. Some were okay. They weren't good. I aged out of the system at 18 with nothing. No family support, no college fund, just a garbage bag full of my belongings and a bus pass." She looked down at Debbie, stroking her daughter's blonde hair with infinite tenderness. "I worked whatever jobs I could find. Fast food, cleaning houses, retail. I lived in a studio apartment that cost almost my entire paycheck. That's when I met Benjamin, Debbie's father. I thought he was my way out. I thought, finally, I would have a family, someone who loved me." Her voice turned bitter. "I got pregnant. Benjamin was excited at first. We got married at City Hall. It wasn't romantic, but it was real. Or so I thought. When I was 7 months pregnant, the doctors discovered Debbie had a congenital heart condition. Nothing immediately life-threatening, but she would need medication, regular checkups, ongoing care. The medical bills would be substantial." Carolyn's hands clenched into fists. "Benjamin left 3 days after that diagnosis, just left. He said he didn't sign up for a sick kid. He said he couldn't handle the stress, the financial burden. He walked out while I was 7 months pregnant, and I never saw him again. No child support, no contact, nothing. He just disappeared like we meant nothing to him." Brent felt anger rising in his chest, but not at Carolyn. At this Benjamin, whoever he was. What kind of man abandons his pregnant wife and sick child? "Debbie was born 6 weeks early," Carolyn continued. "She spent 3 weeks in the NICU. I sat beside her incubator every single day watching her fight to live. She's been fighting ever since. And I've been fighting to give her the life she deserves." She looked around the room, shame coloring her cheeks red. "But I failed. I couldn't keep a roof over her head. We slept in my car for a week and a half. Have you ever tried to sleep in a car with a 6-year-old? In November? When the temperatures dropped below freezing at night? I would run the engine for heat until I was terrified we'd run out of gas. Then I'd turn it off and we'd huddle together under every piece of clothing we owned, shivering until morning. Tears were flowing steadily now, dropping onto Debbie's blonde pigtails. Debbie's health started deteriorating. She has a weak immune system because of her heart condition. The cold, the stress, the lack of proper food and shelter, it all made her sick. Really sick. She developed a fever that wouldn't break. She was coughing so hard she couldn't breathe properly. I was terrified she would die in that car with me, helpless to save her. Carolyn met Brent's eyes directly, no longer trying to hide her tears. I drove around looking for homeless shelters. Every single one was full. There's a waiting list at most of them, weeks long. I didn't have weeks. My daughter was getting sicker by the day. I was running out of gas, running out of money, running out of hope. She took a shuddering breath. I remembered this house. Years ago, when I still had an apartment in town, I used to walk past it sometimes. It always looked empty, like nobody lived here. Beautiful but abandoned. So one night, desperate and scared, I drove here. I saw it was closed up. No cars, no lights, no signs of life. I walked around the property and found a window with a loose latch. I'm ashamed to say I broke in. I pried open that window and climbed through. Carolyn looked around the beautiful bedroom. I swear to you, I took care of everything. I cleaned the entire house, top to bottom. It was dusty, unused. I made it shine. I didn't break anything. I didn't steal anything. I found some canned goods in the pantry that were years old, and I'm sorry, but we ate them. We were starving. Other than that, I bought our own groceries with what little money I had from selling my last possessions. She gestured around the room. I changed the sheets after we used them. I was going to wash them and put the originals back before we left. I kept everything exactly as I found it. I just needed a place for Debbie to be safe, warm, healthy, just for a little while, just until I could figure something out, find a job, save money, get back on our feet. Carolyn's voice broke completely. I never meant to hurt anyone. I never meant to violate anyone's home. I was just a desperate mother trying to save her daughter's life. And I'm so sorry. If you need to call the police, I understand. I'll go to jail if I have to. Just please make sure Debbie is taken care of. Please don't let her go back into the system. She's been through so much already. The room fell silent, except for Debbie's quiet sniffles. Brent stared at this woman, this mother who had risked arrest to protect her child. He should be calling the police. He should be pressing charges. But all he could see was the desperation in her eyes, the same desperation he had seen in his own eyes these past 4 years. His gaze fell on the little girl. She was tiny, fragile-looking, with pale skin that suggested she wasn't well. She looked at him with such fear and sadness that something inside his chest cracked. "The song you were singing," Brent heard himself say. "How do you know that song?" Carolyn looked confused by the question. "The song? I don't know. It's just something I've always known. My foster mother used to sing it to me when I was little. Why?" Brent moved to the window, staring out at the lake, watching the afternoon sun create diamonds of light on the water. "My wife used to sing that song. It was her favorite. She died 4 years ago, right here in this house, in the garden actually." He heard Carolyn's sharp intake of breath behind him. "Her name was Doris," Brent continued, his voice distant, lost in memory. "We met in college, freshman year. She was studying art history, and I was in business. We had exactly one class together, an elective on classical music. I still don't know why I took that class. I've never been particularly musical. But Doris was sitting in the front row, and when the professor played a piece by Debussy, she started crying. Just silent tears streaming down her face. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. I asked her about it after class. She said music had the power to touch the soul in ways words never could, that the right piece of music at the right moment could change your entire life. I thought she was being dramatic, but then she smiled at me, and I understood. Because that smile changed my entire life." He pressed his hand against the cool glass of the window. "We were inseparable after that. Got married right after graduation. I started my company with money borrowed from her parents. She believed in me when no one else did. She worked 3 jobs to help support us while I got the business off the ground. Waitressing, tutoring, even cleaning offices at night. She never complained. She just said she believed in our future. Brent's voice grew thick with emotion. When the company finally became profitable, I bought this place. It was supposed to be our dream home. Doris designed every room. She picked out every piece of furniture, every paint color. The garden outside was her passion project. She spent hours every day out there, planting flowers, talking to them like they were her children. He had to stop for a moment, his throat too tight to continue. When he spoke again, his voice was barely audible. We had been trying to have a baby for 3 years. Multiple rounds of IVF, so many disappointments, so many negative pregnancy tests, but we never gave up hope. Doris used to say that our baby was just waiting for the perfect moment to arrive. A tear escaped and rolled down his cheek. 4 years ago, on a Tuesday morning in June, I left for a business meeting in the city. Doris kissed me goodbye and said she was going to spend the day working in her garden. It was such a normal day, so completely ordinary. I told her I loved her. She told me she loved me more. I said that was impossible. She laughed and said we could argue about it when I got home. His hand clenched into a fist against the window. But when I got home that evening, she was lying in the garden, just lying there among her flowers like she was sleeping. But she wasn't sleeping. An aneurysm. The doctor said she probably didn't feel any pain. She was there one moment and gone the next. No warning. No chance to say goodbye. No chance to tell her one more time how much I loved her. Brent turned back to face Carolyn, and she could see the devastation still raw in his eyes after 4 years. She was only 31 years old. We had our whole lives planned out. We were supposed to grow old together. We were supposed to have children, grandchildren. We were supposed to sit on that porch when we were 80 and watch the sunset together. Instead, I buried her. I put my wife in the ground and I died too. Not physically, but in every way that mattered. He gestured around the room. I haven't been back here since. I couldn't. This place was supposed to be our forever home. And instead, it became the place where all my dreams died, where everything good in my life ended. I closed it up and never looked back. I threw myself into work, built my company into an empire, made more money than I could ever spend. And for what? None of it matters. None of it brings her back. Brent ran a hand through his hair, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. I became someone I don't recognize. Someone Doris wouldn't recognize. She used to say I was too soft-hearted for business, that I cared too much about people. But after she died, I became cold, ruthless. I made decisions based purely on profit margins and stock prices. I forgot that companies are made of people, that every decision affects real lives. I became a machine just going through the motions of living without really being alive. He looked directly at Carolyn. I came here today because I was having a breakdown, a literal physical breakdown. I had a panic attack during a meeting this morning. My company is being attacked by a former mentor who wants to take everything I've built. The board is losing faith in me. My shareholders are panicking. I thought my world was ending. A bitter laugh escaped him. But hearing your story, seeing what you've been through, it puts everything in perspective. My problems are nothing compared to yours. I have resources, support, options. I can hire lawyers, buy my way out of trouble, leverage my connections. You have nothing but love for your daughter and the will to survive. And somehow you're still standing, still fighting, still hoping. That takes more courage than anything I've ever done. Carolyn sat back down on the bed, pulling Debbie close. I understand. When Benjamin left, when I realized I was completely alone, I thought I would drown in the pain. But I had Debbie. She gave me a reason to keep fighting. Brent looked at the two of them, really looked at them. A mother and daughter who had lost everything but each other. And here he was, a man who had everything money could buy but nothing that mattered. "What's wrong with your daughter?" he asked, his voice softer now. "She has a congenital heart condition," Carolyn explained, her hand protectively over Debbie's chest. Nothing life-threatening right now, but she needs regular medication, regular checkups. She gets tired easily, sick easily. The eviction, living in the car, the stress, it all made her worse. That's why I was so desperate to find shelter. Brent walked over and knelt down in front of them, so he was at eye level with Debbie. The little girl shrank back slightly, but there was curiosity in her eyes too. "Hi, Debbie," he said gently. "My name is Brent. I'm sorry you've been sick." Debbie looked at her mother, who nodded encouragingly. Then the little girl looked back at Brent with those incredible blue eyes. "Are you going to make us leave?" she asked in a tiny voice. The question pierced Brent's heart like an arrow. This little girl, so young, already knew what it meant to be homeless, to be unwanted, to be at the mercy of others. He stood up and looked at Carolyn. She was watching him with a mixture of hope and resignation, prepared for the worst, but desperately hoping for mercy. Brent took a deep breath. "I should call the police. I should press charges. You did break into my home." Carolyn nodded, closing her eyes, pulling Debbie tighter. "But I'm not going to do that," Brent continued. Carolyn's eyes flew open. "What?" "I came here today because I was having a breakdown," Brent admitted. "My company is in crisis. The board wants my head. I'm being attacked from all sides. I thought my problems were insurmountable. I thought I was drowning." He looked around the room at the house he had avoided for 4 years. "But hearing your story, seeing what you've been through, it puts everything in perspective. My problems are nothing compared to yours. I have resources, support, options. You have nothing but love for your daughter and the will to survive." "I don't understand," Carolyn said, her voice shaking. "Stay," Brent said simply. "Stay here. Live in this house. Take care of it. It sits empty most of the year anyway. You said you cleaned it. It looks better than it has in years." "You can't be serious," Carolyn gasped. "I'm completely serious." Brent felt something shifting inside him, something that had been frozen for 4 years beginning to thaw. "More than that, I want to help with Debbie's medical care. I'll make sure she sees the best doctors, gets the best treatment. No child should suffer because of lack of money." Tears began streaming down Carolyn's face. "Why? Why would you do this? You don't even know us." "Maybe that's exactly why," Brent replied. "Maybe I need to remember what it means to help someone, to care about something beyond quarterly earnings and stock prices. Maybe you've reminded me that I'm human, that I can still feel something other than pain and anger." Before anyone could say anything else, Debbie suddenly slipped out of her mother's arms and ran to Brent. She wrapped her small arms around his legs in a hug so pure and genuine that it completely undid him. Brent stood frozen for a moment, then slowly bent down and picked up the little girl. She immediately hugged his neck, and he felt her small body shaking with relief and gratitude. He held her carefully, as if she were made of glass, and felt something break inside his chest. 4 years of carefully constructed walls, 4 years of emotional armor, crumbled in an instant. Tears ran down his face. He couldn't remember the last time he had cried. He had been numb for so long that he had forgotten what it felt like to truly feel anything. But holding this little girl, feeling her trust and her relief, brought everything flooding back. Carolyn was crying too, her hands covering her mouth. "Thank you," she sobbed. "Thank you so much. You don't know what this means to us." "Maybe you don't know what this means to me," Brent replied, his voice thick with emotion. He set Debbie down gently and looked at both of them. "I think we all needed this. I think maybe we can help each other." Debbie tugged on his suit jacket. "Are you really going to let us stay? This isn't a trick?" Brent knelt down again and looked her in the eyes. "I promise, sweetheart. This is your home now. For as long as you need it." The little girl's face broke into the most beautiful smile he had ever seen. "Thank you, Mr. Brent." That evening, the three of them sat in the kitchen eating a simple dinner that Carolyn prepared from the groceries she had carefully rationed. Brent insisted on ordering pizza as well, and they talked late into the night. Brent learned about Carolyn's life, about growing up in foster care, about her brief marriage to Benjamin and his betrayal. about her struggles to keep Debbie healthy and safe. In turn, Brent opened up about Doris, about their love story, about how they had met in college and knew immediately they were meant for each other. He talked about building his company from the ground up, about the success that felt hollow without someone to share it with. "I turned into someone I don't recognize," Brent admitted as they sat on the porch watching the stars reflect on the lake. Debbie had fallen asleep on the couch inside, exhausted from the emotional day. "Doris used to joke that I was too soft-hearted for business. She said I cared too much about people. But after she died, I became cold. I made decisions based purely on profit. I forgot that companies are made of people, that every decision affects real lives." "Grief changes us," Carolyn said softly. "When Benjamin left, I became paranoid and afraid. I stopped trusting anyone. I isolated myself and Debbie. I thought I was protecting us, but I was just making us more vulnerable." "How did you end up here specifically?" Brent asked. "In this town?" "I grew up here," Carolyn explained. "In foster care, like I said. I aged out of the system at 18 with nowhere to go. I worked odd jobs, lived in cheap apartments. That's when I met Benjamin. He seemed like my way out, my chance at a real family. Instead, he just gave me more pain." She paused, looking out at the dark water. "But he also gave me Debbie. And she's everything. Every hardship, every struggle, it's all worth it because I have her." Brent felt a lump in his throat. "You're an incredible mother." "I don't feel incredible. I feel like I've failed her at every turn." "No," Brent said firmly. "You've fought for her. You've sacrificed for her. You broke into a stranger's house because you had no other options to keep her safe. That's not failure. That's love." Carolyn turned to look at him, and in the moonlight, Brent saw her clearly for the first time. She was beautiful, but more than that, she was strong. Life had beaten her down repeatedly, but she kept getting back up. There was steel beneath her gentle exterior. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now I stay here for the week I planned," Brent said. "We get Debbie to a doctor, make sure she's properly medicated. We figure out a long-term plan. And you stop worrying. You have a home. You have help. You're not alone anymore." Fresh tears spilled down Carolyn's cheeks. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already have," Brent said. "You reminded me that I'm still capable of caring about something other than work. That's a gift I didn't know I needed." The next morning, Brent woke early and made phone calls. By noon, he had arranged for Debbie to see a pediatric cardiologist in the city, one of the best in the country. Dr. Patricia Morrison had a waiting list 6 months long, but Brent called in favors and made it happen within 24 hours. He paid for all the tests and examinations up front, nearly $15,000 without blinking. The appointment was thorough and comprehensive. Dr. Morrison spent 2 hours examining Debbie, running tests, asking questions. Carolyn held Debbie's hand the entire time, her own hand trembling with anxiety. Brent sat beside them, offering silent support. Finally, Dr. Morrison sat down with them in her office. "Debbie has a ventricular septal defect, a small hole in the wall between the lower chambers of her heart. It's congenital, meaning she was born with it. The good news is that it's relatively small and hasn't caused significant damage to her heart function." Carolyn let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "With proper medication and monitoring, Debbie should be able to live a completely normal life," Dr. Morrison continued. "She'll need to avoid extreme physical exertion and will need to monitor her regularly, but there's no reason she can't do everything other children do. School, play, normal activities, all of it is possible." "What about surgery?" Brent asked. "Can it be fixed?" "It's possible, but not necessary at this stage. Sometimes these defects close on their own as children grow. We'll monitor it, and if it becomes larger or starts causing problems, we can discuss surgical options. But right now, medication and regular checkups are the best course of action." Dr. Morrison wrote out prescriptions and scheduled follow-up appointments. "The most important thing is consistency. Debbie needs to take her medication every day, same time, no exceptions. and she needs regular checkups every 3 months. She'll have them, Brent said firmly. Whatever she needs, she'll have it. Back at the lake house, Debbie was transformed. The new medication worked quickly, and within days she had more energy than Carolyn had seen in months. Her pale complexion gained color. Her eyes brightened. She laughed freely, something she hadn't done much of in the past year. Watching Debbie play by the lake that afternoon, more energetic than she had been in months thanks to the new medication, Brent felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He was making a real difference in someone's life, not just moving money around or closing deals. This mattered. This meant something. Carolyn watched him from the porch, seeing the change in him. The tight, stressed man who had walked into the house yesterday was gone. In his place was someone softer, more relaxed. He was teaching Debbie how to skip stones on the lake, laughing when they all sank immediately. The sound of his laughter was beautiful, genuine, unguarded. "You're good with her," Carolyn said when Brent came back to the porch for water, his expensive suit jacket discarded, his white shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows. "She's easy to be good with," Brent replied, accepting the glass of water gratefully. "She's a special kid. Smart, resilient, full of wonder despite everything she's been through." She is. Even with everything she's been through, all the disappointments and pain, she still believes in goodness. She still trusts people. She still sees magic in the world. Carolyn smiled, but there was sadness in it too. "I try to protect that innocence in her. The world will try to make her cynical soon enough. I want her to hold on to her wonder for as long as possible." Brent studied Carolyn's profile as she watched her daughter. In the afternoon sunlight, she looked younger, less burdened. "You're an incredible mother. The way you fought for her, sacrificed for her, protected her, not every parent would do what you've done." "I would do anything for her. Anything." Carolyn turned to meet his eyes. "She's my whole world. When Benjamin left, when I realized I was completely alone in this, I had a choice. I could give up, or I could fight. Debbie made that choice easy. She's my reason for everything." The days that followed fell into a comfortable rhythm that felt surreal to all of them. Brent found himself relaxing in ways he hadn't in years. He checked his emails only once a day instead of obsessively every few minutes. He let his assistant handle the minor crises. For the first time in his career, he delegated properly and discovered that the company didn't collapse without his constant attention. Instead, he spent time with Carolyn and Debbie. In the mornings, they cooked breakfast together. Brent discovered that Carolyn made the best pancakes he'd ever tasted, fluffy and perfect. She discovered that he could actually cook quite well when he wasn't living on takeout and business dinners. They went for walks around the lake, Debbie skipping ahead while Brent and Carolyn talked about everything and nothing. They played board games in the evening, Debbie taking the games very seriously, celebrating her victories with adorable enthusiasm. They watched movies cuddled together on the couch, Debbie inevitably falling asleep halfway through and needing to be carried to bed. Brent taught Debbie to fish, something his own grandfather had taught him when he was about her age. He found himself telling her stories about his childhood, things he hadn't thought about in decades, about summers spent at his grandparents' farm, about learning to ride a bike, about his first day of school. Stories that brought back memories of simpler times before corporate pressures and devastating losses. "Did you always want to be a businessman?" Debbie asked one afternoon as they sat on the dock with fishing poles. "Actually, no," Brent admitted. "When I was your age, I wanted to be a teacher. I loved reading, loved learning new things. I thought it would be amazing to help other people learn." "So why didn't you become a teacher?" Brent smiled at her directness. Children had a way of asking the questions adults danced around. "Life took me in a different direction. I discovered I was good at business, at building companies, and I met Doris and she believed I could do great things. So I followed that path instead." "Do you ever wish you had become a teacher?" Debbie's blue eyes were curious, thoughtful. "Sometimes. Especially lately." He glanced back at the house where Carolyn was preparing lunch. "But you know what? I think maybe I ended up exactly where I was supposed to be. If I hadn't built my company, If I hadn't become successful, I wouldn't have been able to help you and your mom when you needed it." Debbie considered this, then nodded solemnly. "I'm glad you found us. Or we found you. However it happened." "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." Carolyn would listen to these conversations with a smile, seeing a side of Brent that probably few people ever saw. The corporate CEO, the millionaire businessman, completely relaxed and natural with a 6-year-old girl. He didn't talk down to Debbie. He listened to her seriously, answered her questions thoughtfully, treated her like a person whose thoughts and feelings mattered. At night, after Debbie was asleep, Brent and Carolyn would sit on the porch and talk for hours. They shared their fears, their regrets, their hopes, their dreams. They talked about Doris and Benjamin, about love and loss, about the cruelty and beauty of life, about faith and doubt, and everything in between. One evening, Carolyn asked him about Doris's garden. It had been visible from the house, clearly neglected for years, though some of the hardier perennials still struggled through. "Would it bother you if I worked on it?" Carolyn asked hesitantly. "I don't want to overstep, but I love gardening. My foster mother, the good one, she taught me. It was the one place I felt peace as a kid. And Doris's garden, even overgrown, you can tell it was special. I'd like to honor that if you'd let me." Brent felt his throat tighten. The thought of someone else touching Doris's garden should have felt like a violation. But instead, it felt right. Like bringing something dead back to life. "I think Doris would like that," he said quietly. "She poured her heart into that garden. She would hate seeing it neglected. If you want to restore it, I think that would be beautiful." So Carolyn began spending her afternoons in the garden, with Debbie helping. Brent would watch them from his laptop on the porch, supposedly working but mostly just observing. Carolyn moved through the garden with reverence, carefully clearing weeds, identifying plants, researching what each one needed. Debbie would hand her tools, ask questions, learn. It was healing, watching life return to that space. As the garden slowly came back to life under Carolyn's careful attention, Brent felt something in himself coming back to life too. The tightness in his chest eased. The constant anxiety that had plagued him for years began to fade. He slept better than he had in forever, dreamless, peaceful sleep. At night, after Debbie was asleep, Brent and Carolyn would sit on the porch and talk. They shared their fears, their regrets, their hopes. They talked about Doris and Benjamin, about love and loss, about the cruelty and beauty of life. "Do you think you'll ever love again?" Carolyn asked one night. "After Doris?" Brent was quiet for a long time. "I didn't think so. For 4 years I was certain that part of me died with her. But lately I don't know. Being here with you two, it's like I'm waking up from a long sleep. I'm feeling things I thought I'd never feel again." "Like what?" Carolyn's voice was soft. "Hope," Brent said simply. "Joy. Connection. The belief that tomorrow might be better than today." Carolyn reached over and took his hand. It was the first time they had touched beyond accidental brushes, and both of them felt the electricity of it. They sat like that, hands intertwined, watching the moonlight dance on the water, neither wanting to break the moment. But eventually, the week came to an end. Brent had responsibilities in the city, a company to run, fires to put out. He couldn't hide at the lake forever, no matter how much he wanted to. His assistant had called 3 times, his CFO twice, and his lawyers were demanding his attention on the hostile takeover situation. On the morning he was set to leave, Debbie woke up early and climbed into his bed, something she had started doing the past few mornings when she heard him stirring. "You're really leaving today?" she asked, her voice small and sad. Brent pulled her close. "I have to go back to work, sweetheart. But this isn't goodbye. I'll come visit soon and you and your mom will stay right here. This is your home now. But I don't want you to go." Tears filled her blue eyes. "Can't you stay? Please?" His heart broke. "I wish I could. But I have a company to run. People depend on me for their jobs, their livelihoods. I have responsibilities." "We need you too," Debbie whispered. Those 4 words nearly undid him. He held her tighter, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. And I need you too. You and your mom, you've become so important to me. But sometimes adults have to do things they don't want to do. It's part of being responsible. When it was finally time to leave, Debbie clung to him on the porch, crying, "Please don't go, Mr. Brent. Stay with us." Brent knelt down, his own eyes burning with unshed tears. "I have to go back to work, sweetheart. But I'll visit soon, I promise. And you know what? We can video call every day. Would you like that?" "Every day?" Debbie sniffled. "Every single day. I want to hear about everything you do. Every adventure, every discovery, everything. You promise?" Debbie looked up at him with those blue eyes, so full of trust and hope. "I promise." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in her scent, trying to memorize this moment. "And you and your mom are going to stay right here. This is your home. For as long as you need it. Forever, if you want." He turned to Carolyn, who was also fighting tears. She wore a brave face for Debbie, but he could see the emotion in her eyes. "I've arranged everything. The utilities are in my name. You don't need to worry about any bills. Water, electricity, internet, everything is covered. I'm employing you as the caretaker of the property. You'll receive a salary for maintaining the house and grounds. It's not charity, it's a job. You'll be working for it." "Brent, you've already done so much," Carolyn protested, her voice thick. "This is too much." "It's not enough," Brent said firmly. "It will never be enough to repay what you've given me. You gave me my life back. You reminded me what it means to be human, to care about something beyond profit margins and stock prices." He pulled an envelope from his pocket and handed it to her. "This is your first month's salary, plus extra for any supplies or things Debbie needs. My personal number is on the card inside. Call me anytime, for anything. If you need groceries, if something breaks, if Debbie needs anything health-related, if you just want to talk. I mean that, Carolyn. Day or night, I'm here for you." Carolyn took the envelope with shaking hands, tears streaming down her face. "How can I ever thank you? You've given us everything. A home, security, hope, dignity. I don't even have words. Just take care of yourself and Debbie. Be happy. Restore that garden. Live your life. That's all the thanks I need." Before he could stop himself, Brent pulled Carolyn into a hug. She stiffened for just a moment, surprised, then melted into it, her arms wrapping around him tightly. They held each other for a long moment, and Brent breathed in the scent of her hair, a mix of lemon shampoo and sunshine. He felt her heartbeat against his chest, fast and strong. When they pulled apart, both had tears in their eyes. "This isn't goodbye," Brent said, his voice rough with emotion. "I'll be back, soon, very soon." "We'll be waiting," Carolyn whispered. The drive back to the city felt longer than it ever had. Every mile that separated him from the lake house felt wrong. Brent's chest ached with an unfamiliar feeling, a hollow sensation that grew with each passing mile. It took him half the drive to realize what it was. He missed them. He actually missed Carolyn and Debbie. After just 1 week, they had become essential to him, woven into the fabric of his life in a way he hadn't expected. When he returned to his penthouse apartment, it felt cold and empty despite its luxury. The modern furniture, the expensive art on the walls, the floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views of the city skyline, none of it mattered. It all felt sterile, lifeless. This wasn't home. Home was a lake house with worn wooden floors, a porch that creaked, a garden coming back to life, and 2 people who had accidentally taught him how to live again. He stood at his window looking out at the city lights and felt more alone than he had in years. His phone buzzed with messages from his assistant, urgent items that needed his attention. Board meetings, conference calls, decisions to be made. It all seemed meaningless now. That night, lying in his king-sized bed in his empty apartment, Brent couldn't sleep. The sheets were too fine, too smooth. The room was too quiet. He was used to the sounds of the lake house now, the way the old woods settled at night, the sound of water lapping at the shore. Debbie's soft breathing in the room down the hall when her door was open. He picked up his phone and sent a text, even though it was late. Made it back safely. The apartment feels empty without you two. Hope you're settling in well. The response came quickly, like Carolyn had been waiting. We're good. Debbie misses you already. She cried herself to sleep. So do I. Miss you, I mean. Thank you again for everything. For changing our lives. Stop thanking me. You saved my life just as much as I helped yours. Maybe more. Maybe we saved each other. Brent stared at those words for a long time, his thumb hovering over the keyboard. Finally he typed, maybe we did. Sleep well, Carolyn. Dream of better days. They're already here. You gave them to us. Good night, Brent. He held the phone to his chest, feeling something he hadn't felt in 4 years. Hope. Connection. The sense that maybe, just maybe, life had more in store for him than endless work and hollow success. Over the following weeks, Brent and Carolyn texted constantly. At first, the messages were practical. Carolyn would ask about repairs or maintenance issues. Brent would check on Debbie's health and make sure they had everything they needed. But gradually, the messages became more personal. Carolyn would send photos of Debbie playing in the garden, of sunsets over the lake, of flowers blooming in the spring warmth. Brent would share his day, venting about difficult meetings or celebrating small victories. They started having video calls. The first one was supposedly to discuss a plumbing issue, but they ended up talking for 2 hours about everything except plumbing. These calls became nightly rituals. Brent would pour himself a drink, prop up his phone, and talk to Carolyn while she sat on the porch or in the kitchen. Debbie would often interrupt, wanting to show Mr. Brent a picture she drew or tell him about something interesting she found by the lake. Brent found himself looking forward to these interruptions more than his high-stakes business meetings. His assistant noticed the change in him. Whatever you're doing, she said one day, keep doing it. You're like a different person. His board noticed too. The decisions he made were sharper, more thoughtful. He was delegating better, building stronger teams. The company's crisis began to resolve itself as Brent led with renewed clarity and purpose. But the nights were hard. Lying in his king-sized bed in his empty apartment, Brent would think about the lake house, about Carolyn's laugh, about Debbie's hugs, about feeling like he belonged somewhere. One night during their video call, Carolyn looked particularly beautiful. She had let her hair down and it cascaded over her shoulders. She wore a simple blue sweater that matched her eyes. Brent found himself staring, unable to look away. What? Carolyn asked, noticing his gaze. Nothing. I miss you. Both of you. Carolyn's expression softened. We miss you too. When are you coming back to visit? I don't know. Things are crazy here. The merger is in a critical phase. The merger will still be there next week, Brent. Life won't wait. Her words hit him hard. She was right. He was falling back into old patterns, putting work before everything else. But now he had something worth putting first. You're right, he said. I'll clear my schedule. I'll come this weekend. Carolyn's face lit up with joy. Really? Debbie will be so excited. So will I, Brent admitted. I can't stop thinking about you two, about being there. We can't stop thinking about you either. Carolyn's voice dropped to almost a whisper. It's strange how quickly you became so important to us. Not as strange as how quickly you became important to me. They held each other's gaze through the screen, both aware that something significant had just been acknowledged. This was more than gratitude, more than friendship. Something deeper was growing between them. That Friday evening, Brent made the drive back to the lake house. His heart raced with anticipation the entire way. When he pulled into the driveway and saw Debbie burst out of the front door, running toward his car with her arms spread wide, he felt happier than he had in years. He barely had time to step out of the car before Debbie crashed into him. Mr. Brent, you came back. Brent scooped her up and spun her around, both of them laughing. Of course I came back. I promised, didn't I? Carolyn stood on the porch watching them with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face. She had dressed up a little, wearing a sundress that Brent had never seen before. Her hair was styled and she looked absolutely radiant. When Brent carried Debbie to the porch and set her down, he and Carolyn stood facing each other for a moment. Then, without thinking, he pulled her into a hug. She came willingly, her arms wrapping around his neck. They held each other longer than was probably appropriate, neither wanting to let go. "I'm so glad you're here," Carolyn whispered into his shoulder. "Me too. God, me too." That weekend was even better than the first week had been. There was an ease between them now, a comfort. They moved around each other like they had been doing this for years. Brent helped Carolyn with dinner while Debbie set the table. They went for a boat ride on the lake, with Debbie squealing with delight. They watched movies cuddled on the couch, Debbie between them but gradually falling asleep and sliding down to rest across both their laps. On the second evening, after putting Debbie to bed, Brent suggested a walk along the shore. The moon was full, casting silver light across the water. They walked in comfortable silence at first, then began talking about everything and nothing. "Can I ask you something?" Carolyn said as they sat down on a bench overlooking the lake. "Anything. What do you want, Brent, out of life, I mean, now, after everything?" Brent thought carefully before answering. "I used to think I wanted success, power, respect. I built an empire chasing those things. But they didn't fill the hole Doris left. Nothing did, until I met you and Debbie." He turned to face her. "I want to feel alive again. I want to wake up excited about the day ahead. I want to laugh and mean it. I want to love and be loved. I want a family." Carolyn's breath caught. "Brent, I know it's complicated," he continued. "I know we've only known each other a short time. But something happened when I walked into this house and found you. Something shifted inside me. You and Debbie, you've become my reason for everything." "We feel the same way," Carolyn admitted, her voice trembling. "Debbie asks about you every day. She draws pictures of the three of us together. And I can't stop thinking about you. You're the last thought in my head before I sleep and the first when I wake up." Brent reached out and gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His hand lingered on her cheek, and Carolyn leaned into the touch. They were inches apart now, both breathing hard. "Is this crazy?" Brent whispered. "Am I crazy for falling in love with you this fast?" "If you're crazy, then so am I," Carolyn whispered back. "Because I'm falling too." The kiss, when it finally happened, was inevitable and perfect. Brent cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly at first, then deeper as she responded. Carolyn's hands gripped his shirt, pulling him closer. The kiss held 4 years of loneliness from him and a lifetime of longing from her. It was tender and passionate, gentle and desperate. When they finally pulled apart, both were crying. "I love you," Brent said. "I know it's too soon. I know I should wait. But I love you, Carolyn, and I love Debbie. I love both of you so much." "I love you too," Carolyn sobbed, laughing through her tears. "God help me. I love you too." They held each other under the stars, two broken people who had found healing in each other. Neither could believe their luck. Neither could believe that out of such desperation and pain could come something so beautiful. They walked back to the house hand in hand, stopping frequently to kiss, to hold each other, to say, "I love you" again just to hear it. When they reached the porch, they sat together on the swing, Carolyn tucked into Brent's side, his arm around her shoulders. "What happens now?" Carolyn asked. "Now we figure it out together," Brent said. "Maybe you and Debbie move to the city during the school year, so Debbie can attend a good school. We spend weekends and summers here at the lake. We build a life. We become a family." "A family," Carolyn repeated, testing the word. "I never thought I'd have that." "You have it now. We all do." The next day dawned bright and beautiful. Brent woke up feeling more content than he could remember. He and Carolyn had stayed up late talking, making plans, dreaming about the future. They had decided to take things one day at a time. But both knew where this was heading. This was forever. After breakfast, they decided to spend the day by the lake. It was warm enough to wade in the shallow water. Debbie was excited, running ahead while Brent and Carolyn packed a picnic lunch. "Careful, baby," Carolyn called out. "Stay where we can see you." "I will, Mommy." Debbie's voice rang out clear and happy. They set up on the small beach area, laying out blankets and towels. Brent had brought his camera and took pictures of Debbie playing, of Carolyn laughing, of the two of them together. He wanted to remember this day forever. After lunch, Debbie wanted to explore further along the shore. "Can I go look for pretty rocks, Mommy? Please?" "Stay close," Carolyn said, "and don't go near the water alone." "I won't." Brent and Carolyn watched her skip away, then turned to each other. "She's so happy," Carolyn said. "I haven't seen her this healthy and happy in years." "She's thriving," Brent agreed. "You both are." They kissed again, unable to resist. They were so absorbed in each other that they didn't immediately notice how much time had passed. When Carolyn finally looked up, her heart stopped. "Where's Debbie?" Brent looked around. There was no sight of the little girl in the red dress. She was just right there. "Debbie!" Carolyn called out, standing up. "Debbie, where are you?" No answer. "Debbie!" This time Carolyn's voice was panicked. They both started running along the shore, calling her name. Brent's heart pounded in his chest. She couldn't have gone far. She was just here. Where was she? Then he saw it. A flash of red in the water, about 30 feet from shore. Floating, not moving. "No!" Carolyn's scream was primal, filled with every mother's worst nightmare. Brent didn't think. He just ran. He kicked off his shoes as he ran and dove into the lake, swimming harder than he ever had in his life. The water was cold, shocking his system, but he didn't care. He had to get to Debbie. He had to save her. It felt like hours, but was only seconds. He reached the small floating form and grabbed her, turning her face up. She was unconscious, her lips blue, her skin pale. "No, no, no, please God, no," Brent muttered as he swam back to shore with one arm, holding Debbie above water with the other. Carolyn was in the shallow water, screaming, reaching for them. When Brent got close enough, she grabbed Debbie from his arms. My baby. Debbie, wake up, please wake up." Brent pulled himself onto the beach and immediately started CPR. He tilted Debbie's head back, cleared her airway, and began chest compressions. He had taken a first aid course years ago for a corporate retreat and never thought he would use it. "Call 911, he shouted at Carolyn, who was frozen in shock. "Carolyn, call 911 now." His command broke through her paralysis. She fumbled for her phone with shaking hands and dialed. Brent continued CPR, counting compressions, giving rescue breaths, praying harder than he ever had in his life. "Come on, Debbie. Come on, sweetheart. Breathe for me. Please breathe." After what felt like an eternity but was less than 2 minutes, Debbie suddenly coughed. Water came up from her lungs. She gasped, her eyes flying open in confusion and fear. That's it, baby." Brent quickly turned her on her side as she coughed up more water. "You're okay. You're going to be okay." Carolyn collapsed beside them, sobbing, her hands on Debbie's small body. "Oh God, oh thank God. Baby, I'm here, Mommy's here." Debbie was conscious but weak, coughing and crying. Brent kept her on her side, rubbing her back, talking softly to her. "You're safe, we've got you, help is coming." The ambulance arrived within 10 minutes, though it felt like hours. The paramedics took over, loading Debbie onto a gurney. Carolyn climbed into the ambulance with her, holding her hand, murmuring constant reassurances. "I'm following right behind you," Brent called out. He ran to his car, still dripping wet, and followed the ambulance to the hospital, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. At the hospital, Debbie was rushed into emergency care. Brent and Carolyn were left in the waiting room, both in shock, both terrified. Carolyn was shaking so badly she could barely stand. Brent wrapped her in his arms, holding her as she fell apart. "This is my fault," she sobbed. "I should have been watching her." I should have been paying attention. What kind of mother am I? Stop, Brent said firmly. This was an accident. You're an amazing mother. Debbie is going to be fine. She has to be fine. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure. The fear that gripped his heart was unlike anything he had felt, even when Doris died. This was different. This was a child, an innocent little girl who had her whole life ahead of her. Time moved strangely in that waiting room. Sometimes it crawled, sometimes it raced. Brent got them coffee that neither of them drank. He answered calls from his office with single-word responses, not caring about anything except Debbie. Carolyn sat rigid, staring at the doors to the emergency room, willing them to open with good news. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a doctor came out. Both Brent and Carolyn jumped to their feet. "She's stable," the doctor said immediately, and Carolyn nearly collapsed with relief. Brent caught her, holding her up. "She aspirated some water, but we've cleared her lungs. Her oxygen levels are coming back up. She's unconscious, but her vitals are strong." "Can we see her?" Carolyn begged. "Soon. We're moving her to a room. She'll need to stay here for observation at least overnight, possibly longer. We want to make sure there are no complications." "Whatever she needs," Brent said. "Money is no object. Whatever tests, whatever care, just do it." The doctor nodded and left. Brent and Carolyn sank back into their chairs, exhausted with relief. "You saved her life," Carolyn whispered. "If you hadn't been there, if you hadn't known CPR." "Don't think about that," Brent said, pulling her close. "I was there. She's going to be okay." They were finally allowed to see Debbie an hour later. She looked so small in the hospital bed, hooked up to monitors and IVs. Her blonde hair was still damp, spread out on the pillow. She was unconscious but breathing steadily on her own. Carolyn rushed to her side and took her hand, tears streaming down her face. "Hi, baby. Mommy's here. You're safe now." Brent stood on the other side of the bed, his hand gently stroking Debbie's arm. "You gave us quite a scare, little one." They stayed like that for hours, one on each side of the bed, maintaining constant contact with Debbie. Nurses came and went, checking vitals, adjusting medications. The doctor returned periodically with updates. Everything pointed to a full recovery, but Debbie remained unconscious. "It's not unusual," the doctor assured them. "Her body went through trauma. Sleep is healing. She'll wake when she's ready." Night fell. Brent convinced Carolyn to eat something from the cafeteria, though she barely touched the food. He brought back blankets and pillows, setting up a makeshift bed on the chairs. But neither of them slept. They kept vigil, watching Debbie's chest rise and fall, monitoring every beep of the machines. At some point in the night, Carolyn broke down again. "I can't lose her. She's everything. She's my whole world." Brent moved his chair closer and put his arm around her. "You're not going to lose her. Look at her. She's strong. She's a fighter just like her mother. What if there's brain damage? What if she doesn't wake up the same? Then we deal with it. Together. Whatever happens, whatever she needs, we'll handle it. I promise you, Carolyn, I'm not going anywhere. We're in this together." Carolyn leaned her head on his shoulder, drawing strength from his presence. "I love you. I don't know what I would do without you." "I love you too. Both of you. You're my family now." The second day crawled by. Debbie remained stable but unconscious. More tests were run. Everything came back positive. No brain damage, no lasting effects. Her heart condition was unchanged, but still she slept. Carolyn talked to her constantly, telling her stories, singing songs, begging her to wake up. Brent told her about all the things they would do when she got better, all the places he would take her, all the adventures they would have. On the third morning, as dawn light filtered through the hospital window, Debbie's fingers twitched. Carolyn gasped. "Brent, did you see that?" They both leaned forward, watching intently. Debbie's eyelids fluttered. Her breathing pattern changed, and then slowly her eyes opened. "Debbie," Carolyn cried. "Oh, baby, you're awake." Debbie's blue eyes were confused at first, trying to focus. Then she saw her mother's face and a small smile appeared. "Mommy?" "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Debbie's gaze shifted to Brent. "Mr. Brent, you saved me." Brent felt tears running down his face. "You scared us, kiddo. Don't ever do that again." "I'm sorry. I just wanted to get a pretty rock I saw. I stepped in the water and it was deeper than I thought. I tried to swim back, but I couldn't." "It's okay," Carolyn said, smoothing her daughter's hair. "It was an accident. What matters is, you're okay now." The doctor came in and did an examination. Debbie was weak but responsive. All her cognitive functions were normal. It was, the doctor said, a miracle. A few more minutes in the water and the outcome could have been very different. "When can I go home?" Debbie asked. "Soon," the doctor promised. "We want to keep you one more night for observation, but if everything continues like this, you can go home tomorrow." "Home," Debbie repeated, then looked at Brent. "Will you be there too?" Brent glanced at Carolyn, who nodded through her tears. He looked back at Debbie and smiled. "Yeah, sweetheart. I'll be there." That evening, with Debbie sleeping naturally now, Brent convinced Carolyn to step outside for some air. They stood in the hospital garden under the stars, holding each other. "I've been thinking," Brent said, "about everything, about us, about what happened." "Me too," Carolyn replied. "I keep thinking about how fragile life is, how everything can change in an instant." "Exactly. Carolyn, I don't want to waste any more time. I've already lost 4 years to grief. I don't want to lose any more time to fear or caution or worrying about what's proper." He pulled back and looked into her eyes. "Move in with me, you and Debbie, not to the lake house, to my home in the city. Be my family, let me be yours." "Brent, that's a huge step." "I know, and maybe it seems fast, but when you know, you know. I love you. I love Debbie. I want to wake up with you every day. I want to help Debbie with her homework. I want to be there for doctor's appointments and school plays and everyday moments. I want all of it." Carolyn was crying again, but this time with joy. "Are you sure? Taking on a ready-made family is a lot." "It's not taking on, it's choosing. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing this. I'm choosing love over fear, hope over caution. Say yes, Carolyn." She threw her arms around his neck. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." They held each other, both crying and laughing. It was crazy. It was impulsive. It was absolutely right. The next day, as promised, Debbie was discharged. Brent drove them all back to the lake house to collect their belongings. Debbie was still weak, but her spirits were high. She chattered excitedly about seeing Brent's house in the city. That evening at the lake house, after Debbie was in bed, Brent led Carolyn out to the dock. The moon was full, reflecting on the calm water. He had something important to do. He got down on one knee, and Carolyn gasped. "Brent, what are you doing?" "Something I should have done weeks ago." He pulled out a small box. "Carolyn Lee, you came into my life when I had given up on living. You and your daughter reminded me what it means to love, to hope, to dream. You gave me a reason to be better. I don't want to spend another day without you. Will you marry me?" He opened the box, revealing a beautiful diamond ring, elegant but not ostentatious. "Perfect." Carolyn was sobbing, nodding her head. "Yes, oh God, yes." Brent slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. They kissed under the stars in the place where they had first found each other, now transformed from a house of memories into a house of new beginnings. "Mommy! Mr. Brent!" They turned to see Debbie standing in the doorway in her pajamas. She must have woken up and come looking for them. "What's going on?" she asked sleepily. Carolyn and Brent exchanged glances, then Carolyn knelt down to Debbie's level. "Mr. Brent just asked me to marry him, and I said yes." Debbie's eyes went wide. "You're getting married, really?" "Really," Brent confirmed, also kneeling down. "Which means if it's okay with you, I'll be your dad. A real dad. Forever." Debbie looked between them, processing this. Then a huge smile broke across her face. "Can I call you Daddy?" Brent felt his heart swell. "I would love that more than anything." Debbie launched herself at him, and he caught her, holding her tight. Carolyn wrapped her arms around both of them. The three of them stayed like that, a family united by love and second chances. 6 months later, life had settled into a beautiful new normal. Carolyn and Debbie had moved into Brent's mansion in the city. The house that had once been a cold showpiece was now filled with laughter and love. Debbie's artwork hung on the walls. Family photos were everywhere. It was a home. Debbie attended an excellent private school where she thrived. Her health, with consistent care and medication, was better than it had ever been. She had friends, she was happy, and she called Brent Daddy without hesitation. Carolyn had enrolled in design school, pursuing her passion with Brent's encouragement and support. She also volunteered at a local shelter for homeless families, using her experience to help others who were struggling. Brent had found balance in his life. His company was more successful than ever, but he no longer let it consume him. He left the office at reasonable hours. He never missed Debbie's school events. He took weekends off to spend with his family. The lake house remained their special retreat. They spent most weekends there and every summer vacation. It was where their story began, and it would always be a sacred place for them. The wedding was planned for the spring, back at the lake house, something small and intimate, just close friends and the people who mattered. But they were already a family. The wedding was just making it official. One evening, as Brent tucked Debbie into bed, she looked up at him with those blue eyes. "Daddy?" "Yes, sweetheart. Are you happy?" Brent thought about the question. He thought about where he had been a year ago, broken and lost and going through the motions of living without really being alive. He thought about the day he had walked into the lake house expecting to find peace in solitude, and instead finding salvation in unexpected places. "I'm happier than I ever thought I could be," he answered honestly. "Why do you ask?" "Because Mommy and I are really happy too. We were so scared and sad before we met you, and now everything is good. You saved us." "You saved me too, Debbie. You and your mom, you saved my life." "Then we all saved each other," Debbie said wisely. Brent kissed her forehead. "Yes, we all saved each other. Sleep tight, princess." He found Carolyn in their bedroom, looking out at the city lights. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, and she leaned back into him. "Debbie asleep?" she asked. "Just about. She asked me if I was happy." "And what did you tell her?" "The truth, that I've never been happier." He turned her to face him. "A year ago, I had everything money could buy but nothing that mattered. Now I have everything that matters. I have love. I have family. I have purpose. I have you." Carolyn reached up and touched his face. "We were so desperate that day. I was ready to run to take Debbie and disappear rather than face the police. But you didn't call them. You showed us kindness when we expected judgment. You gave us hope when we had none. You gave me something too. You reminded me that I was human, that my heart could still feel, that I could still love." They stood together, holding each other, looking out at the city that held their future. Behind them, down the hall, Debbie slept peacefully, safe and loved. In a few months, they would all stand together at the lake house and officially become a family in the eyes of the law. But they already knew the truth. They had become a family the moment a desperate mother, a sick little girl and a broken man found each other in a lake house and chose love over fear, hope over despair, and life over mere existence. Sometimes salvation comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the people who save us are the ones we least expect. And sometimes, a desperate act of trespassing can lead to the greatest love story of all. Brent Poole had thought his life was over when Doris died. But he had been wrong. His life hadn't ended. It had just been waiting. Waiting for a woman in a yellow shirt and a little girl in a red dress to break into his house and his heart, showing him that second chances are real, that love can bloom from desperation, and that the best families are the ones we choose. The lake house stood by the water, no longer a monument to loss, but a testament to hope. Its windows glowed with warm light on weekends, filled with the sounds of laughter and love. And if anyone had told Brent a year ago that breaking and entering would lead to the greatest happiness of his life, he never would have believed it. But life has a way of surprising us. And sometimes the most beautiful stories begin with desperate measures, unexpected meetings, and the courage to open our hearts when we least expect to use them again. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful love story. Let us know what you thought of this tale full of emotions and surprises. Tell us your name, where you're watching from, and rate this story from 0 to 10 if it touched your heart. And if you enjoyed the plot, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the amazing new stories coming soon. See you next time.